They believed they could never be touched. For years, they walked through life as if they owned every place they entered, certain that their charm could cover their cruelty and that their clever games would never come back to haunt them. They thought the world existed only to feed their pride, to praise their performance, and to obey their every wish. But here's what time always proves: no one escapes the results of their actions forever. The narcissist, no matter how strong or superior they appear, always reaches a moment they once believed would never happen. A moment where they stand alone, exposed, and face the emptiness they spent their whole life trying to hide from. This isn't about wishing pain or revenge upon them. It's not about wanting to see them suffer. It's simply about truth, a truth that unfolds quietly, like a slow fire burning in the background, until one day the narcissist looks around and realizes they're standing in the ashes of everything they tried to control. And if you've been hurt by one, if you've felt their lies, their twisting of your reality, or their cold manipulation, this truth is important. It gives you the closure you deserve. It reminds you that life has a strange but powerful way of balancing what once felt unfair. The narcissist's greatest trick is the image they create, the illusion they design so carefully to win attention and admiration while keeping hidden the deep insecurity that drives their every move. At first, they seem unstoppable. They appear confident, magnetic, and charming, almost larger than life. They know exactly what to say, how to act, and how to make anyone feel special. They read people with skill, they adjust to every situation, and they give the impression of being everything one could ever want. For a while, this act works perfectly. It gives them what they crave most: validation. Those early moments with them often feel exciting. They appear generous, fun, and full of life. But behind that carefully built mask lies a truth they can't avoid forever. Masks are heavy, and illusions can only last so long. No matter how perfectly they play their part, time always brings cracks to the surface. They believe their mask is permanent, that they can fool people endlessly, that their smooth words and practiced smiles will always save them. And for some time, it does. Friends admire them. Lovers adore them. Strangers are drawn to their energy. They tell stories of success, often stretched far beyond truth. They present confidence so strong that it makes others question their own instincts. But slowly, the cracks begin to show. It might start small: a lie uncovered, a story that doesn't match, a reaction that feels off. The people around them begin to sense something isn't right. At first, they doubt themselves, wondering if they misunderstood. That hesitation is exactly what the narcissist depends on. But truth has a way of surfacing. Over time, the signs become too obvious to ignore. The more the narcissist tries to keep control, the more draining it becomes. Keeping up their image requires endless effort. They must remember every lie, manage every story, and shape every perception. This is not real power. It's fear disguised as control. Fear of being exposed, fear of being ordinary, fear of losing admiration. That fear becomes a weight they can't carry forever. What once seemed effortless starts looking forced. Their charm begins to feel rehearsed. Their confidence turns into arrogance. The very traits that once attracted people become the reasons others start to walk away. As people begin trusting their instincts again, they start to see through the performance. Friends who once defended them now question their loyalty. Partners who once excused their behavior begin to notice the emotional damage it caused. Even coworkers who once admired their drive begin to recognize the manipulation hiding beneath it. Each realization is like a small light breaking through the darkness. And once people see the truth, they can never go back to the illusion. The narcissist senses this shift and it terrifies them. They may try harder to manipulate, stir up conflict, or play the victim to regain control. But these desperate moves only speed up their downfall. Eventually, the illusion crumbles. The narcissist finds themselves with fewer admirers, fewer allies, and fewer hiding places. They can no longer cover their cruelty with charm or protect their ego with lies. The same behaviors that once brought them success become the very reasons for their isolation. Their downfall doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens slowly through their own choices. And when the mask finally breaks, all that's left is the person underneath, lonely, empty, and forced to face the truth they've denied all along. Isolation for a narcissist doesn't begin with a dramatic collapse. It starts quietly, almost invisibly, like light fading from a room. At first, they still appear magnetic, still collecting new friends and admirers who are drawn to their energy. They feed off attention, loving the idea that they are the center of every moment. But with time, the people around them start to notice patterns. The lies, the manipulation, the selfishness, and the lack of real empathy. One by one, people begin to pull away. Sometimes there's no big argument, no scene, just a growing silence. Messages go unanswered, invitations stop coming, people begin spending their time elsewhere. To the narcissist, it feels like the world is getting smaller, but their pride won't let them see the truth. It's their own actions that are driving everyone away. At first, they convince themselves that this loneliness is freedom. They say they don't need anyone, that others just can't understand them. They call it independence, strength, or uniqueness. I prefer being on my own, they tell themselves. No one's on my level anyway. But deep down, they're not choosing solitude. They're being abandoned by it. Relationships built on control and deceit cannot last. Eventually, even the most patient person seeks authenticity. And authenticity is something a narcissist cannot truly offer for long. When people start craving real connection, the narcissist has nothing genuine to give. This stage of isolation hits hardest because narcissists rely on what psychologists call supply, the attention, admiration, and emotional energy they take from others. They don't truly seek love, they seek validation. When that validation disappears, it feels like an emotional withdrawal. They try to replace lost connections with new ones, but every new relationship burns out faster than the last. Each failed attempt makes them more exposed, more desperate, and more alone. Instead of reflecting on their own behavior, they blame others, calling them disloyal, jealous, or ungrateful. Over time, their world grows quieter. Friends stop reaching out. Family members set boundaries. Romantic partners walk away. Even colleagues start keeping their distance, weary of the drama that always seems to follow them. On the outside, they may still try to appear in control. They post photos, brag about success, and pretend they're living their best life. But it's a performance, one meant to hide the growing emptiness inside. The more they insist they don't need anyone, the more obvious their loneliness becomes. The real tragedy is that this outcome was always preventable. If they could show humility, admit mistakes, or feel genuine empathy, they could rebuild relationships. But their fear of being vulnerable keeps them trapped. To admit they were wrong would mean admitting they're not perfect, and that's something their ego will never allow. So they keep pretending. They call their isolation independence. They wear it like armor, even though it's really exile. A life without real closeness, without genuine warmth. A life where they are constantly surrounded by noise, yet feel utterly unseen. They tell themselves they don't need anyone, but the silence left behind by those who left tells the truth they can't speak. The narcissist's hunger for attention is like a fire that must always be fed. For a while, they know exactly how to keep that fire burning. They charm, they perform, they create chaos to stay at the center of every story. In the beginning, it works beautifully. Their energy draws people in, their stories entertain, their presence feels captivating. They seem unstoppable, someone who will always matter, someone who could never fade. But attention isn't endless. Over time, the same tactics that once drew admiration begin to feel exhausting. What once seemed exciting starts to feel repetitive. The narcissist depends on novelty, both in how they present themselves and in the chaos they create to keep people focused on them. Yet, even chaos loses its power when people grow tired. The audience gets smaller, the applause fades, and without an audience, the narcissist is left with the one thing they've feared most all along, the sound of their own emptiness echoing back at them. And that's where every story like this ends, not with victory or revenge, but with silence. Because no matter how long they run from it, no matter how many masks they wear, time always uncovers the truth. The narcissist who once believed they could never fall eventually faces the one thing they can't manipulate, the reality of who they really are. They create, they exaggerate success, tell big stories, and form relationships that act like stages for their next act. But people are not endless wells of admiration. Friends, partners, and coworkers start to notice the patterns. They begin to realize that the excitement always comes with a hidden cost. Lies, manipulation, and a never-ending hunger for attention drain everyone involved. At first, people might stay because the narcissist seems entertaining, persuasive, or charming. But after a while, the repetition becomes impossible to ignore. The same dramatic arguments resurface. The same tales of bravery against made-up enemies are told again. The same self-praise replaces real connection. Seeking attention may attract a crowd for a while, but it cannot hold influence forever. As time passes, people start craving honesty more than a show. They see when actions don't match words. They remember the broken promises and forgotten commitments. They get tired of drama that never brings resolution, and when that exhaustion sets in, they quietly walk away. The narcissist often doesn't notice this change at first. They might mistake polite distance for admiration or assume that a few new admirers can replace the ones who've left. But the crowd is thinning. The applause grows faint, and every new attempt to step back into the spotlight feels more forced and desperate than before. In a world that values authenticity and freshness, irrelevance sneaks in slowly but steadily. The narcissist might chase new trends, reinvent their image, or attach themselves to new people in a bid to recover their former glow. Sometimes they even manage a brief comeback, a new relationship, a short burst of popularity, a small win. But each success fades faster than the last. What they fail to see is that real influence comes from depth, and depth is the one thing they refuse to nurture. Without empathy, growth, or humility, their image remains shallow. No matter how often they try to rebrand themselves, the emptiness eventually shows. The effects of this slow fall are deep. As their influence shrinks, opportunities disappear. Friends stop turning to them for advice. Invitations dry up. Coworkers start teaming up with people who bring real cooperation and calm instead of chaos. Even on social media, engagement drops. The narcissist might keep posting, bragging, or performing, but the world doesn't watch with the same interest. They are no longer feared or admired. They're simply ignored. For a narcissist, being ignored hurts more than being alone. Loneliness can be disguised as independence, but irrelevance attacks their identity. Their whole sense of self revolves around being noticed, praised, and envied. When the spotlight dims and no one pays attention, they must face the truth they've always run from. Without constant attention, their sense of self crumbles. What once felt like power now feels like silence, and silence is the one thing they can't control. Regret for a narcissist doesn't look like normal regret. When emotionally healthy people make mistakes, they often feel empathy, want to make things right, and think about how they hurt others. For a narcissist, regret is hollow and self centered. They don't stay up at night thinking about how their actions hurt someone they loved. Their regret comes from losing control, watching their illusion fall apart, or missing the admiration they once had. What they actually mourn isn't the person or relationship, it's the power that came with it. When someone important finally leaves them, the narcissist doesn't grieve like most people. They don't sit quietly with sadness or reflection. They go through withdrawal. The praise, attention, and emotional energy that once flowed to them suddenly stops. And that loss feels like an attack on their ego. They may seem angry, bitter, or dismissive, claiming they never cared anyway. But underneath, discomfort takes hold. Their mind circles around questions like, how did I lose control? Or, why didn't they stay to play my game? This isn't love speaking, it's possession. It's the shock of realizing that their hold on someone has finally broken. Their version of regret often comes wrapped in rewritten stories. They can't admit the truth because real self-awareness would destroy the grand image they've built. So they create new stories to protect themselves. They tell themselves the other person was weak, unfaithful, or ungrateful. They insist that outside circumstances, not their actions, caused the loss. These lies help them avoid the pain of realizing that manipulation, deceit, and cruelty pushed people away. But even as they tell these lies, a quiet sense of doubt remains. Deep inside, they know the stories aren't true, and that hidden conflict keeps them restless. Sometimes the narcissist tries to return to the people they once rejected, not out of love, but because they miss the familiar supply of attention. They might send apologies that sound sincere, but these gestures are not genuine. They're tactics meant to reopen the door and regain control. If the other person accepts them, the narcissist feels a temporary victory. If they're rejected, the regret deepens, not from sadness, but from frustration that their usual tricks failed. Over time, these empty regrets pile up. The narcissist looks back and sees a trail of broken friendships, distant family members, and failed relationships. Many of the people who once cared for them have moved on to healthier lives. Some of those people are now thriving, finding peace and success. And this comparison cuts deep. It confirms what the narcissist always feared, that their power wasn't permanent and that others can live happily without them. Yet even faced with this truth, they rarely choose real reflection. Instead, their regret turns sour. It becomes bitterness. They grow more defensive, more resentful, and more determined to prove they were never wrong. Deep down, though, they know they're losing what matters most: relevance. Their regret becomes a silent shadow, following them no matter how loudly they act content. It reminds them that every trick, every lie, every broken bond has led to a place where control slips away and no one is left to listen. Emotional bankruptcy is where most narcissists eventually end up, no matter how hard they try to avoid it. In the beginning, their lives may look perfect. Some hold impressive jobs, earn good money, or show off glamorous lifestyles. From the outside, it seems like they have it all: a charming partner, many friends, material comfort. But these appearances are just masks. Their relationships are transactional, built on what they can get rather than give. Their success is driven by a hunger for validation, not genuine purpose. Their charm hides deep insecurity. As time goes on, the cracks beneath the surface widen. The emotional debt they've built from years of taking and never giving starts to demand payment. Narcissists live by draining others of affection, time, and emotional energy, offering little back. Their connections are not based on care, but on consumption, and such relationships can't last. Friends eventually notice the imbalance and slowly drift away. Partners get tired of the endless demands and lack of empathy. Family members learn that loving a narcissist always costs them their peace. Bit by bit, the narcissist finds themselves surrounded by fewer people willing to feed their ego. They may still have casual friends or coworkers who tolerate them, but these ties are shallow. In this phase, they often cling to symbols of success to cover up the emptiness inside. They chase promotions, flaunt possessions, and brag about accomplishments to prove they still matter. Outwardly, they appear confident, maybe even untouchable. But when the audience is gone and the room is quiet, the silence becomes unbearable. Their victories feel empty because they were never born from passion, kindness, or love, only from the craving to be admired. Achievements without real connection can't fill that emptiness. The more they collect, the more obvious this truth becomes. And aging makes it worse. Beauty fades, charm weakens, new admirers grow scarce. The narcissist, once so sure of their appeal, now faces the one reality they can't manipulate: time.